Hello, welcome to RevelatorAlf. So in this video I'm talking about whether you should make modifications to your motorcycle, whether you should customize it in any way, shape or form. Okay, so first of all, I have two thoughts on this. It really depends, are you making the modification for appearance sake or making it for performance sake or handling sake? So if it's purely for appearance sake, let's say you've got a new bike and you don't like the colour scheme, or you don't like the the way the tail looks, so you put a tail tidy on it, or you want to change your handlebars, that kind of thing, change the lights, whatever, because of the appearance of it, then that's a purely subjective thing. That's something that is down to you, but you've got to bear in mind it may affect the resale value of that bike. It may affect its resaleability as well, because somebody else may not want what you've done to that bike on their new purchase. So that's something you've got to consider as well. If you want to take it back to a dealer, the chances are the dealer is going to prefer a stock bike or a standard bike rather than one that's been modified in any way, shape or form. It really depends what the modifications are, if they're bolt-on modifications or whether they're permanent changes as well. Bolt-on modifications are usually, well, there's not an issue if you want to return it to stock. One where you've had some serious work done to it, that's when it can be a bit of a problem. The older the bike gets, the more iconic the bike is, the more valuable a standard bike, a stock bike will be. So if you're looking at any sort of Japanese or any American, any British bike or whatever, European bike, the older it is, the more standard it is, the more value it will be. Obviously modified bikes can hold value, but it can be a bit more difficult as well. Now, performance upgrades, that's something completely different. So you've really got to think long and hard before you actually start modifying your bike for performance upgrades or handling upgrades, let's say suspension, that kind of thing, wheels. Is it really going to have the benefit that you want, and is it worth it in terms of financial reward as well? Because you're going to be spending a lot of money potentially for something that's actually going to make a marginal difference, if in fact no difference at all. People make big mistakes with performance upgrades all the time. They think they're going to make a huge difference to their bike, and actually it doesn't. So let's say you want to, I don't know, change the exhaust, for example. If you don't change the exhaust, so if you change the exhaust and you don't, let's say, reject the carbs, or if you don't remap it properly, then all of a sudden you're going to have an inferior performing bike, worse than it was before. Let's say if you change your front suspension settings, for example, well, if you don't get that right and also change your rear as well, because you've got to do it as a pair, you can't just change one and not the other, then your bike's going to be all over the place. Look, we all think as bikers that we're better than the manufacturers sometimes, and that well, that bike, if they'd done this, if they'd done that, it would be much better, we can make it better. And in a lot of cases that's true. That's I'm not saying that we're always wrong, but we're not always right either. I think the way I look at it now is I'll take a standard bike and I try and push that standard bike, to its limit. And really, if you're pushing that bike to its limit, then a performance upgrade might work. But how many of me as well, actually push a bike to its absolute limit 100% of the time? The chances are, if you're honest with yourself, very rarely will you do that. So you've got to consider, okay, are you, this extra 5% that you're going to improve, is it really worth it? Because if you're only riding your bike at 80%, then you're only going to get an 85% outcome. If you're riding at 100%, you're going to get 105% outcome. That's the difference, really. So, there's still a lot of life in a stock bike. Now, if a standard bike, the older it gets, obviously, you can do performance upgrades because the technology wasn't around possibly when that bike was first built. So you can add performance upgrades, and that will work in terms. But again, performance upgrades may devalue the bike as well, so you've got to consider that. I think, as I say, the older I get, the more I would look at a standard bike and I'd say, okay, does that bike, am I buying that bike, whether used or second or new, is it going to achieve what I want it to achieve? Am I using it to its full potential? Does the manufacturer know, have they designed a bike here that do what it says on the tin? And invariably they do. As I say, if you say for example, I've got a Triumph Explorer, you know, big adventure bike. Yeah, I complain about it, or I criticize it in lots of different ways. However, it does do what it's supposed to do. It will take you off-road, it will go to most situations. It's just hard work, but it will do it. You don't need to start adding performance upgrades. You know, I've got off-road tires, well, on-road, off-road tires on it, but actually the road tires were great in about 90% of situations. I've bought those and I was riding that bike in 100% to its limitation off-road, let's say. And where I found the biggest limitation was in the tires. The tires were just not giving me that 5% which I needed. And that's where in most cases it's going to be something as simple as tires, tire pressures, things like that. Suspension settings, but not necessarily suspension changes. Power, engine power, usually that's enough, you know, for whatever you need. For everyday riding, I should say, or everyday situations. Now, again, it's different if you're taking it to the track, taking it to, you know, an off-road track or a race track or something. That's where things change a little bit. If you've got a race bike, that's where things change a little bit. But for everyday road riding, I just say, just be careful what you wish for. Be careful how much you're spending, how much it's going to affect the resale value, and what actual tangible benefit you're going to get at the end of the day. Because almost guaranteed, there will be a slight difference. You might think it's, you know, giving you a bit of a difference, but it won't be by much. It won't be a drastic change. Well, in most cases anyway. Sometimes it will, but in most cases. I'm generalizing, of course. Right, anyway, hope this helps. I'll say more videos coming up on this kind of theme as well. So check out those. Subscribe to the channel, that'd be really cool. Check out the website, RevelatorAlf.com. And catch me on Patreon, RevelatorAlf as well. I really appreciate your support there to keep on producing the content both in the man cave or out on the road as well. Right, catch you then. Ta-ra.